Hey Hodies, welcome to my channel. My name is hautemesstom, and thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we are going to be doing a first impressions of the new Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes palette. If you are new to my channel, thank you so much again for clicking. My channel is often about loving my makeup collection as it currently is, but every now and then there's a release that sparks my interest enough for me to purchase it. And when that happens, I like to talk about it on my channel. So if you are looking for content, regular content where the person you're watching is using a lot of the same makeup over and over again, subscribe. I would love to have you subscribe. That's what we do here for the most part. Many of the people who are subscribed are on low buys or budgeting or on no buys. So we're really supportive about that. But also, you know, when you're on YouTube, every now and then you need to throw in a new release. Make sure you like this video before you leave it. And I'm also on patreon.com if you'd like to support me there. Thank you so much to my beautiful, lovely, wonderful patrons. Before we get into this, here's a disclaimer. This is a first impressions video. I know a lot of people feel really brazen and confident to say that like they know how they feel about formulas when they first have them. I don't really subscribe to that. So whenever I introduce a new palette into my repertoire, I like to use it many, many times on my channel, many different ways, use it in my personal life before I bring you like my final thoughts on it. So this will not be the last review. Like this is not my review. This will not be the last time you see the Makeup by Mario palette in my content. And I like doing it that way. So if you want to join for the ride and see like other things that I do with it or whatever, I feel free to subscribe. I know I already said that, but it's just a first impression. So if I happen to really like it today, if things go really well today, that doesn't mean that you have to go buy it. Please, 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 if you are not really wanting this palette, if it doesn't spark your interest, don't use me as your alibi. Don't use me as your alibi to buying it. Because if you were going to buy it, you were going to buy it with or without with what I said. I'm just putting that disclaimer up front. Don't use me as a guinea pig. That's all I'm saying. Because it could go well. It was like it could terribly. And kind of the same thing. Like you could have been like, that's a really ugly thing and I never wanted to buy it. Well, then don't buy it. Like don't force yourself to buy it. One thing that I always like to unpack whenever I buy a new item of makeup, not that it happens like so incredibly rarely, but whenever I'm doing a first impressions, I like to think about the why, right? Like what about this particular product spoke to me? I'm subscribed to like the Makeup by Mario website's web server email blast list. And they sneak peeked this and they were like, this is launching soon. And I was like, that's one of the most beautiful palettes I've ever seen. It made my heart pitter patter. The last time a palette made my heart go and pitter patter and like make me go ooh was the Izumaya palette. And my gut instinct was really, really right about the Izumaya palette, the industrial palette, not the Wild West one. That one's, I mean, I don't think that one's even really out yet. So I can't speak to that one at all, but the industrial palette really worked out for me. I know it didn't work out for everybody, but I know it worked out for many people. And so I was like, maybe history will repeat itself. And I very rarely like buy palettes out the get-go. There's also a second side to this. Mario's brand is a brand that I have been watching from afar with genuine curiosity. It seems like many people like his stuff, but a lot of the branding about Mario isn't that exciting, right? It's makeup designed by a makeup artist. I don't think one could actually claim that it's like makeup for makeup artists, although he did like design it to be that way because the shimmer palette was released separately from a matte palette. And if you work professionally, you don't want your shimmers like mixing in with your mattes because cameras will catch that, especially if you were just trying to do a matte look. The packaging, I remember when it launched, I was working at Sephora when this brand launched. I just remember the packaging feeling like really chintzy, really light, which makes sense if you are a makeup artist building a makeup kit. You want things to be more performance-based rather than like pretty and aesthetic. And not that like the all-white branding isn't aesthetically pleasing, but I like not like the most ornate packaging, but I like packaging that has heft. I like packaging that feels purposeful, but like still beautiful. And Mario's brand just like kind of lacked that for me. But with the release of this palette and having heard so many good things about his makeup, I thought that since I was really interested in this would be a really great way for me to like foray into the brand and perhaps try other things in the future if this were to go well. That was kind of my thought process whenever I was doing that. Let me tell you a little bit about the experience of receiving it. I bought mine through Mario's website. I do have a pro discount there. I did not pay $68 and I was curious if I was gonna feel like it was worth $68. I still don't know the answer to that question. Just with opening it, I'm seeing perhaps some upgrades or some different vision happening with this particular palette. It comes in the Makeup by Mario packaging, very sleek black matte All of his packaging comes like this. But once I opened it up, this is what's inside. Now, this to you may look like the regular Makeup by Mario packaging, but it isn't. It is actually quite heavy. It's pretty dense. And instead of this being like a shiny plastic, it is I think this might be like metal of some sort. You open it up, and here is the inside. Now, many of you would argue that that's a pretty boring eyeshadow palette, and I'm not gonna sit here and try to disagree with you about that. It is a very, very plain Jane, but ethereal eyes, man. That's the word ethereal got me, and so I'm so interested to play with these shimmer shades. That's kind of what my eyes were set on whenever I went to purchase this, but also it seems pretty true to being neutral. Some of it is a little bit cooler leaning, but nothing is leaning really too warm. There is like, I think that taupey shades is a little more cool toned than neutral, but like it's actually neutral. Like it's, and I feel like a lot of times when we think of neutrals, we think of like warm neutrals, but I feel like he landed somewhere in the middle. And so that was just like very appealing to me. But yeah, the packaging is very pleasing. And in a way, as I'm thinking of more of like a makeup consumer rather than a makeup artist, this is like nice. I'm excited to be holding it. It's just, it doesn't feel like his other stuff. I had the liquid metal palette that he made, and it just felt kind of chintzy. That's not the vibe here. So it has a magnetic closure. It's not super hard to open. There's not very much grip. I'm not really sure. I don't have hand mobility issues, but if you do, perhaps this could be a little bit difficult to open because it's really sleek across here. There is a little bit of texture, but again, I can't speak to that. It's just something that I'd like try to be cognizant of whenever I am looking at a new thing. Something that I really, really love is that I didn't notice this. I'm literally just looking at this now. The shades don't really have names. It's EE1, EE2, EE3. And I just think that's the ethereal eyes. That is fine by me. It has a 12-month shelf life, manufactured in the USA, assembled in the Dominican Republic. So what I'm gonna do now is send you to some overhead footage of me actually swatching the shades on my arm, and then we'll be back to talk a little bit more. So I haven't actually swatched the palette yet. I haven't touched anything. I'm gonna be recording that footage you just saw after this. I haven't stuck my finger in any of these. My favorite part of my first impressions videos is like the introduction, the first touch. I remember touching his mattes and his shimmers whenever the brand launched, but I remember when I was leaving Sephora, I was pretty disinterested in makeup, kind of in general. And then literally leaving the company made me realize how much I liked makeup. I didn't really immediately miss working for Sephora, but I did immediately miss having like access to things. And I was like, oh man, I do love makeup. It was just like I was being run down by working there. His brand launched like right before I left. Not super familiar with it, but these two shades right here, these two, I want to get my fingers in them. Okay, that was really soft and creamy and dreamy. And the second shade is just as creamy and dreamy. The one on my middle finger, we're absolutely going to use that today. Ooh. These are like really, really buttery. I know you just saw swatches of them. Oh, but the second one's like a topper. So those two were pretty promising texturally. I am curious to see if the two shimmers on the bottom here might have more pigment to them. Okay, so that one is very softly pressed. I like pushed my finger into it and it moved a little, which is okay by me. I tend to like softer pressed shadows. This shadow here is a little bit firmer. It's not as soft as the other one. Ooh, the one on my middle finger. Again, really winning. Those are also pretty sheer. The first one is a little more pigmented. And then this one is also seemingly a little bit more like a topper. There's a brown in here that looks like it's like a matte with sparkles. I'm gonna get my fingers in this guy right here. It's like a satin that has some shimmer in it. So the formula isn't matte. itself. I'm gonna allow myself the joy of exploring the mattes with a brush because I just got my fingers all in the sparkles and I don't want to get the sparkles all in the mattes yet. I know it's gonna happen inevitably. Let's try to preserve that for as long as we can. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to prime my eyes. I'm going to be using the Too Faced Shadow Insurance. It's still a newer product to me. Actually, I don't know how I feel about the Shadow Insurance. We'll find out in time. I think what I would like to do, this in the crease, and that's about that's about all I figured out. I'm actually gonna set the primer with that shade. We'll see how pigmented it is. Again, I've never worked with Mario's shadows before, so I don't know how this is gonna go. Oh, that's pigment. Oh, okay. The shade's basically the color of my skin, and it showed up. So there's that. These are a lot different than I thought. I don't know what his formula is typically like. It's reminding me of what I recall. It's been a while since I've had an EBH palette in my collection, but it is reminding me of that formula. So there's some kick up in the pan, so they're just softer shades. I have found there to be benefits to the softer shades and, you know, like harder pressed shades, like they're just like different beasts. I do typically prefer something softer pressed, but like the Hindash palette is probably the thing that I have that is like the most densely pressed, like it's pressed pretty hard. I like that. I like that palette a lot too. So it's, you know, it's not like the most important thing to me. Now that I have like a bit of an idea of what the formula is like, I'm ready to start building the look. I do want to use these two shades. My fear is that after I use those two shades, I'm gonna want to stop and then just like let it be like this very gentle eye look. But let's see how this taupe looks on the eye. I'm proceeding fairly cautiously because I'm not familiar with this formula. So I will say that this shade doesn't give me the immediate satisfaction that the cream shade did. It is doing its job. It's taking some time, which I guess I'm a little bit surprised by. But it is really pretty once I'm getting the look of it. It's just like, I don't know, taking more buildup than I guess I was expecting. But you can see it there. It seems just like highly agreeable. And I will say this, like I typically do like my eyeshadows to be less pigmented, to be able to like build them up. But it does feel like I'm needing to build this up maybe more than I typically would think. I realize that whenever shadows are pressed less, like they're not as firm, they typically go on more pigmented, which I'm not finding is the case with this one. And I feel like it performed differently on this eye. Like it could be the eyeshadow primer too, because I'm not super familiar with it. My eyeshadow's it's not catching there. It's leaving a weird like line. I'm not a big fan of that, but that, again, I'm going to attribute that probably to the eyeshadow base. I'm going to take a larger, fluffier brush and try to just work this out. I'm not really sure what's going on over here. I'm going to have to just like ignore it for the rest of it. I think perhaps I'm going to use a little bit of this pink salmon-y shade and kind of do that on the outer third of my eye, just blending from the gray closer to the center is what I'm thinking, or like that taupey shade, it's closer to the center. Now that we're getting into some blending work, these are blending really well. They're layering really well. I'm not sure. I assume that this is just an eyeshadow. It is the only one stamped with the by Mario. Like it's the only one pressed with that in it. I'm not sure if that means it's like a liner. I've not watched any content about this. Like I didn't even watch like the launch. I have a feeling because it has that, it means it's like different. It also just looks like it's the darkest shade. So perhaps I'm just gonna lean into that. And I'm gonna take that on the very outer corner of my eyelid. That was really easy to work with. I feel like everything that's happening on this eye, I'm very much into. Everything that's happening on this eye is failing me. The next course of action I want to take, I'm going to take this and place it kind of like blending from the pink closer to the inner corner. I'm going to go with my finger. As a reminder, this shade right here is what I just put on my lids. I mean, it's sheer, right? And I'm okay with that. But it also feel like it was like a little more cool toned in here, and then on my eyes it's like not looking as cool toned. Now I'm gonna take this shade and I'm just gonna put it on the inner corner of my lid. I'm just gonna actually maybe take it all the way across my lid and over top of that last shade, kind of as a topper. Yeah. Okay. Wow. We have something brewing here. We really do. I'm gonna zoom you in even closer so you can like get a close-up look at the eye. All right. Okay. I have some thoughts and feelings. I'm gonna do the rest of my face and then I will come back with you like with my final first impression thoughts. If that makes sense. That's what we're gonna be talking about. All right. We have the full face on, the full fantasy we're serving. In case you didn't know. I think I can't emphasize enough how much this feels like purposefully made for a consumer. The packaging is so nice. It's a little bit distracting, but I even like the silver around the pans. It's really beautiful. The big, large mirror. I pulled the thing off before I started filming because I also am obviously making like TikToks and reels. Of course, you gotta milk the new content for what it's worth, okay? You got the new palette, newer palette. You gotta milk it. As they say in Pittsburgh, you gotta regatta. I think first and foremost, I really want to commend Mario for making this feel so almost luxury special. That's the vibe I'm getting from, like, it feels luxury. So I think with this upgrade in packaging, I can see the $68 price point a little bit more. I'm gonna zoom you in once again so you can take in the eye look with like makeup around it. Okay. So I fought a little bit with this side, but as I was putting my other makeup on, it seemed to have gone away. My issues with that eye like kind of have dissipated, but I think it's probably from like putting foundation around it. I think that's really what it was. There was just like some redness on the outskirts that it wasn't covering and it was looking a little bit not great. The lid, okay? That's, ooh, it's gorgeous. Here's what I found so far with the shades I used. So I used this shade, that as far as the mattes go. This was super, super pigmented. This one took some building up, which was shocking because this one went on and it said, "Hello, I'm here." And that, again, is not far off from the shade of my skin tone. So I wasn't expecting like a full coverage experience. And then I was like, oh yeah, these must be like really highly pigmented. Then I went into this one and it wasn't as pigmented, which wasn't a problem. It was just like from this one to this one, it felt like a major jump in like how pigmented things were going to be. I like this shade. I think I need to play with it like a little bit more, but it was nice enough. The pink shade went on really, really beautifully. It's not really showing up much in the final look, but I ended up putting stuff over top of it. So that's like not the fault of it. And it also wasn't the star of my show today. So I wasn't really worried about it, but it looked really beautiful whenever I was putting it on and it blended so well with these two. No complaints about it. Still need to play with that shade a little bit more. And the dark brown down here, excellent. It worked just the way I wanted it to. It too blended very easily in with the other shades. I also would say like not as pigmented as this one was. I don't know why this cream shade is like so pigmented. It's like in your face pigmented and the other shades just like weren't in my experience so far. I liked the brown. That was good. I am a little more perplexed with the shimmers. This one, I did not like it. I didn't like it putting it on my eyes. I can't really say I liked the color of it. And I think if I had stopped there, I would have been displeased. It just like wasn't me. Like it wasn't feeling, I wasn't vibing. It did not pass the vibe check. It wasn't ugly by any means. It wasn't it. It just wasn't it for me. It's like, you're not the girl I thought you were, and it wasn't the girl I thought she was. Okay, like, so I put the shade on and it was like, what's happening here? Then I put that one on. And that is the magic that you're seeing there. That's that shade all over the lid. And there's probably some of this shimmer still shining through, but ooh, that's what dreams are made of. And I also threw a little bit of the one above it on the inner corner. It's not really easy to discern the two when they're this close to each other. They're pretty similar shades. Like, I think one has like a more cool toned and one has like a more neutral topper situation. And I just happened to pick the one that has like the little bit more of like the taupey quality to it to put on my lids. But boy, howdy, did that please me. It's so creamy and soft, which is I didn't even try putting it on with a brush. I'm wondering what it would look like. I'm sure if I took something that was pretty fluffy and like put it on, it wouldn't be like as wet shine, but oh man, that's like exactly what I'm looking for right now. That effect is like, if there's something that HMT is looking for, it's this. It's like this shiny look. These shades remind me of like Pat McGrath, the baked shades, but easier to use. And I'm curious, I've heard that the 2 or more recent Pat McGrath palettes, which I haven't purchased, those aren't baked shades anymore, the 4 on the side. And Hannah has talked about them being a little bit easier to work with. And Hannah being of Hannah Louise Poston, and if you are new here, she reviewed that palette and she said that even though they weren't the baked shades, they still served a really, really beautiful purpose. Pat McGrath formulas don't tend to be this soft, so I can't imagine it being this soft, but I'm wondering if it's like a similar idea. Like, I'm very impressed. The thing is, it's not like it's that unique in my makeup collection having this wet look. It's something that I'm always like, it's like I'm in search of, right? It's like I always want something that leaves my lid looking super glossy. It really is it for me. It's really, really doing something. What my hope is as my relationship with this progresses is that I learn how to use it a little bit better. Perhaps I don't have that weird thing happening with my eye again. I'm excited to use this shade right here. I think I probably will play with these 2 mattes the next time. Perhaps this shimmer all over the lid. Maybe I'll play with that. I think the thing that I'm probably the least interested in is this one right here, but perhaps if I use it, I will enjoy it. I really like the quality of the mattes. I am concerned for people who have deep complexions. I feel like perhaps these 2 are really gonna miss out. I don't even know if you'll be able to make use of that shade. I haven't swatched it yet, but like, again, this is the color of my skin tone. I wouldn't say that the shade appeared chunky. It was really buttery and smooth. And of course, I'm just speaking as like what I could see happening. I don't have a deep complexion. If I can find anyone who's done a review that has a deeper complexion than me that's talked about this, I will link them down below, just in search of, so if you have a deeper complexion and you wanted to hear my review but also wanted to see someone who has deeper complexion swatching and talking about how the shades look on their skin tone, hopefully I can be able to provide at least somewhere else for you to click to find that. Would I pay $68 for it? I don't know about that, but am I excited to keep playing with it? Yes. I think if you are someone who doesn't have like Pat McGrath in your repertoire or even Charlotte Tilbury, it kind of reminds me of the Pop Shop, but the sparkles aren't that big. It's like really just wet looking. So if you're like into that kind of thing, and if you already have a lot of that, perhaps this isn't something that you need. But I think my relationship with this will only grow. I will only grow fonder of it as I learn it a little bit more. And again, it's not like a complicated palette, but these formulas are brand new to me. So unfortunately, I can't speak to if it's like the regular Mario quality. I'm not disappointed by the mattes. I think that this one just threw me, and then from there I was like, I don't really know what's happening. And then the thing happened on my eye and I got a little bit distracted whenever I was using this one. But I really liked the quality of the mattes. Otherwise, are they the best mattes I've used? I can't say that. I don't think that's true. But I think they're really good. I think they're really good. It does feel like the kind of palette where you can't make any feel like you can't make any mistakes with what you put on your eyes. You're gonna get a good look. That's what's exciting about it. It almost feels like one of those things where like this would be really good for someone who just got into makeup and doesn't have like anything to go off of, and you're like, let me get you started with something nice with a quality formula. I feel like this wet look shine, beginners don't like this. They're not in search of this. I think, I don't know, at least I wasn't when I first, like I loved sparkle, but this wet look, I just feel like that's more of like a current trend. Like this intense sparkle wet look with eyeshadow is like much newer. And I just feel like when you're new to makeup, that's not really what you're in search of, because I think someone who was looking for high impact shimmers would swipe these and be like, all it is sparkle. And they wouldn't like that. I feel like you want that base color when you're newer to makeup, but it does just feel like something you could give to someone who's new to makeup. Again, it feels really nice. You could give it to them and be like, here, have fun. This is a really beautiful palette. I think you'll get on with it. And I think I kind of like the fact that there weren't really metallics in it or anything like that. There's just like this beautiful ethereal shimmers. It's hitting a lot of marks for me. Every mark, no, but maybe in the future I'll feel like it hits a lot of marks. I see myself taking this on trips. I see if I was quickly needing to do a night out look, that this is something that I would grab. I don't know if you've noticed, that's kind of been the pattern here. It's like, what can I look really cute with on a night out really quickly? That's like the vibe of what I've been attracted to. Do you know how much I go out? Almost never. But I want to look like I'm ready. That's my first impression thoughts on the Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes palette. Again, I just want to reiterate, first impressions doesn't mean that's like how I'm going to feel about it. I don't really think you should base your purchasing power on someone's first impressions, unless there was like one thing that someone's able to answer in their first impressions that will convince you to buy something. It's not that I don't see value in first impressions. Like, I think that opening that and feeling how heavy it was as a first impression is like an important thing, right? Like getting that experience of opening it and like feeling out the vibes of a palette surely is something that is value to it. But as far as like swaying you to purchase, I just don't think that they're as worthwhile for that thing, if that makes sense to you. As I said, my channel is not really all about buying all of the new things, and this one's like $68, and for $68 is kind of like a plain Jane looking thing. So you have to be really kind of into that. That has to be your bread and butter for that to be even something that you would consider purchasing. Gonna leave that there. Thank you all so much for watching. If you are new here and you enjoyed today's content, I would love to have you subscribe. Make sure you like this video. That really helps me and I would really appreciate it. And I'm also on patreon.com again if you would like to support me there. Remember to follow your haute and you will find me. It's really funny. I was actually thinking about this. I was like, are people gonna think I grew a mustache exclusively for this Makeup by Mario first impressions? I will see you in my next video. Bye-bye. Forever.